cattle inventories are at all-time low, and they're going down, and here's why. It's hard to turn on a dime the amount of cattle that are in the United States, and it as contrast with poultry. So a chicken, if you want to have meat in the supermarket, you have to plan 8 weeks in advance. From the time the egg is laid until that bird is butchered and goes to freezer camp, we call it, is 8 weeks. Now for a hog, it's on the order of months. It's a few months between the time the sow has, the hog, the piglets or whatever, and then you butcher the hog. For cattle, it's about 2 years, sometimes longer than that, between when the calf is born and when it's butchered. And also with cattle, they haven't been mechanized and industrialized in the way that chickens have. You need one cow to have one calf, right? They may occasionally have a twin, but that's a very rare occurrence. Whereas with hogs, they have a whole litter. I don't raise hogs, so I don't know what they're called. Maybe it's not a litter, but and with birds, a chicken can lay an egg every day. So with a cow, the gestation period is almost identical to humans. So the most steers or calves, beef animals that one adult grown female cow can produce in a year is one. And when that calf is born, it can go into two different streams. It can, and I'm not talking about dairy cattle. They're a different breed here. And there is some overlap. Like if a dairy cow is fully depreciated and not producing as much milk, she will go into the beef supply. So there's a little bit of connection there, but not a whole lot. So when a cow on your farm has that 1 year event, has that calf can either go into beef, into the pipeline where it goes to usually a feedlot if you're getting it from Costco, or it can stay on the farm if it's a female. So this only works for half of the animals that are born once a year to a cow. They would have a female calf, and that one can go either to Costco or it can stay on the farm and have its own calf. But again, that's going to take, like that heifer is going to be almost 2 years old before you breed her, and then in the 3rd year she will have that calf. So you can see this is like an aircraft carrier. When you have a herd on a farm, it's not like you decide how many eggs to hatch this month and then 2 months from now you'll have that much chicken. This is on the order of 2 or 3 years to steer this. Okay.
By the way, I have to pull this out, but sometime in 2020 when you and I were doing all those shows on lockdowns, you were always sort of playing the role of Nostradamus.
Yes.
Where you literally predicted precisely this problem with lockdowns.
Yeah, I'm getting chill bumps because I remember that. I was pointing out that the supply chain for some foods is 3 years long, and that what we were doing during COVID in terms of planting an apple tree, it's going to take 3 or 4 years for that, sometimes 5 or 6 years for that apple tree to bear fruit. And if during COVID you're paying people to stay home and not plant apple trees, you're affecting the price of apples 5 years from now. The same thing when you slaughter the dairy herd because they didn't have the facility. The school was closed and they couldn't redirect that milk because it was in cartons for school children, not for moms at the supermarket. So they destroyed dairy cattle, which were going to take 2 or 3 years to build back up. And so you had a lot of weird things going on during COVID, and we're still seeing the tail of that, no pun intended, right now. So back to the beef. So here's what happens when the price that the farmer sees of beef cattle goes up. So there's kind of two kinds of cattlemen. There are the brood stockers, the ones that have the mama cows, and they typically don't finish the calves. They might sell them at 1 year old and ship them to another type of farmer that feeds them for a year or 6 months to get them up to weight in order to butcher. So I'll be talking about the cow-calf operator. That's the ones that keep the cows and then have the calves. Well, when a cow-calf operator, and they're the ones who are faced with this decision, not the feedlot. The feedlot gets a heifer or a steer, and they don't breed them. Once they get to the feedlot, they're going to Costco. Okay. The cow-calf operator, when the price of beef gets high, has that decision to make every year with the new heifers. Am I going to sell it to the feedlot, or am I going to keep it on my farm? Well, when the price of that the feedlot is willing to pay goes up, the farmer who keeps the brood cows is more incentivized, at least in the near term, to sell them to the feedlot. So let's say a farmer can get $1,000 typically in a year for a heifer. He might say, well, I'm just going to keep that heifer and make her into a brood cow. But if that price goes to $2,000 or even $3,000, the farmer would almost have to be insane to keep that and try for another couple years and try to turn it into a brood cow. So it is cyclical. What happens is when the price that the farmer sees of cattle goes up, the farmer sells more of his inventory. He may even take that 8-year-old cow who was 2 months late having her calf this year, and so she's not as productive as the other cows in the herd. He may say, you're going to be hamburger. And so not only do you have the new heifers going into the food stream, you have the cull cows being culled at an earlier age. So the capacity to produce beef goes down when the price of cattle goes up. And this continues and continues until it gets so out of whack that somebody says, you know what? I'm going to pay $4,000 for a 1-year-old heifer, and 3 years from now, I'll be in the cattle business because I think this is going to continue. And so, it's a cyclical thing, and we're in the longest cycle that we've ever seen in the United States. It's been going up for, I think, over a decade now, and inventories have been going down. And part of that is because the government's making it harder to raise cattle and to get them processed. And also another part of that is it's just not as profitable now. And again, this is where the imports come into play. If the president makes it less profitable to be a cattle farmer because he's somehow, I don't know what his plan is, but he's proposed to buy more beef from Argentina, which means he's planning to do something that's not free market. He's planning to incentivize beef purchases from Argentina, I think. If he does that, he's going to disincentivize the young farmer or the would-be farmer in the United States who's in his 20s and thinking about taking over the family farm. Are we going to divide this farm into a subdivision, or will we keep raising cattle here? And if he sees a bunch of beef coming from Argentina, right when prices would be high to the farmer and incentivize him to get into the business, he may not get into the business. So that will perpetuate the problem.
Thank you for watching Kibbe on Liberty. You can watch new episodes every Wednesday anywhere that you consume podcasts, on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify, whatever. Watch, click, like, check it out.